Hi, everybody. It is great to see you today. I have a really special feature that I'm super excited to bring to you all, and that is another one of my interviews in my interview series. Today, I've got Kathleen Weber with me. Kathleen is the founder of Quest Dynamics Group, which is based in East Haven, Connecticut. She attended DePaul University. She's a former Division I NCAA Basketball Coach, a former WNBA trainer, and a business owner who's focused on the development of amateur athletes and small businesses. So that's why she's here to talk to us today. She has a lot of learnings that will really apply to people who are looking for new jobs. Kathleen's latest venture, like I said, is Quest Dynamics Group. Here she's taken all the lessons that she learned over the years and created a system called Ignite that we're going to learn more about today. And this focuses on mindset strategies, mission, values, and purpose with an emphasis on individual ownership and accountability. When this system is followed and implemented correctly, individuals and teams enjoy lots of increased performance and success. And one of the things that I in my group talk about is mindset, and that's something that I know many of you have a lot of interest in. So I'm super excited to bring Kathleen here to talk to you about that today. So I know I want to learn more about all of this. I'm guessing you all do too, because the truth is that self-motivation and a consistent focus on our goals and execution is hard for a lot of people, particularly when they feel stressed, like many do today. But a lot of us are always seeking tools that we can use and apply in order to help us with our personal and with our professional goals. So while we will primarily be focusing on our work and professional lives for the purposes of today's discussion, Kathleen's methods can be used to help athletes achieve peak performance and as individuals, and as a team, and her strategies can be applied to personal goals as well. So in talking about the workplace, people have goals that include performing better in their current job, or securing a promotion, for example, or finding a new job. And these are the things that I work on with a lot of my clients. So with that, let's dig in. So Kathleen, we've heard about how I describe what you do, but I'd like to hear you describe what you do, the system you've created, and maybe even hear about a few examples of results you've seen among those that you coach.
Sure. So this whole process started for me back, it was probably 30 years ago. I just aged myself. And it came from Coach Bruno. I worked with Coach Bruno at DePaul for several years, both at his camps and as an assistant coach at DePaul University. And he's got a tremendous career as a leader and a coach in women's basketball in that arena. But he had given a talk at a camp, which I believe he still does to this day, at the kind of the end of the camp, the week goal setting session with the kids. And he took a quote out of a book, What They Didn't Teach You in Harvard Business School. And he used it in his speech. And what that was in 1979, Harvard Business School did a study of their class, of their graduating class within their master's program. And they asked him two questions. Do you know what you want to do? And do you know how you're going to do it? 80% of the class had no clue. They just figured they were graduating with an Ivy League degree. They were going to be smarter than everybody else, make a lot of money, and move on. Yeah. 17% of the class knew what they wanted to do, but they didn't have a plan. And then 3% of the class knew what they wanted to do, and they had a beginning of a process to start to go after what that was. They re-polled the class 10 years later. And they found that the 17% was earning 3 times more than the 20%, or the 80%. And the 3% was earning 10 times more than the 97% put together.
Amazing.
So what that told me back then was two things: know what you want to do and know how you're going to do it. As I went through my professional career and I studied, and I'm just a ravenous reader. I read and I'm just constantly wanting to learn and the next new author. I learned about the Pareto principle, the 80-20, ratio, and it fit into that. So what I did for my life is I turned that study that they did, and I turned it into a macro. And this is how I see the world. So whenever I walk into any kind of an organization, if I walk into a team, if I walk into a meeting, if I walk into Starbucks, I immediately look around. Who's the 80%? Who's the 17%? And who's the 3? Right. And you can tell automatically because the 3 are laser focused. If the line's too long, it's not bothering them because they're so far ahead of where they are on their path and what they want to achieve. The other thing I did with that is I flipped it, right? So in my mind, every time I leave the house and every time one of my athletes leaves the house, 80% of the people that we're going to run into don't know what they want and they don't have a plan. 17% of the people kind of know what they want and they don't have a plan. So 97% of the people that we're going to run into don't really have a solid plan. And so we're outnumbered, right? Yeah. If we don't do certain things, if we don't read certain things, if we don't surround ourselves with the right people, they say, the 5 people that you surround yourself with most are going to dictate your income, your education, your, most of the most important parts of your life. So if you don't listen to things, surround yourself with the right people, do the right things, you're going to get sucked into being in that 80 or 17%. And so this whole system is based on that. Anytime I go into an organization or I build a team, I want a team of 3%ers. I want a team of people who know what they want, and we set a plan on how they're going to do it, right? And so the system starts, and I'm actually starting with another group on Thursday, another group of athletes. It's called Foundations. Okay. Right? And it's we dig in. It's not so much about mindset and motivation. I think that those things they come and go. They're moody.
True. That's a great point. Yeah.
I tell the athletes it's like bad gas. It depends upon what you're feeding your brain, right? That where your mindset or your motivation is going to be. What I try and pull out of people is a way to live their life. Right? Yeah. A way to approach life. What your purpose is, what your intention is, where you're going, what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and most importantly, why. Why you do it. And so that the whole system kind of allows them to figure that out for themselves. So when they wake up in the morning, regardless of what's going on in their family, regardless of the pandemic that's happening right now, it doesn't matter because their feet are on the ground and they know what they're doing, and they can take that approach and apply it to anything so that problems then turn into promise and possibilities instead of obstacles that you're just banging into. You just find another way to work out what it is that you've decided for yourself.
Well, this makes so much sense because, a lot of the people who come to me and who work with me as a career coach, you're right. That's kind of where we start is, what do they want to do? And a lot of people don't have a plan. Sometimes they don't know what they want to do next. And that's where they, to your point, need help crafting a plan that they can be focused on and execute against and take action on. Intentional action, right? Focused action, like you're saying. So you're right. Mindset plays a part in all of that. But to your point, it does ebb and flow. All of us, like with this pandemic going on, are going to have good days and bad days. But if you have your focus and your purpose, as you like to say, right, that is going to help drive you and you're committed to it. And you have your personal accountability to doing those things consistently. It helps you to make progress toward your goal because that's really what people want to do at the end of the day. People get frustrated when they feel like, I don't know how to get from point A to point B. So that's really what you're helping people do. That's really what I help people do, which is why I wanted to bring you here today, because I think that people don't understand that sometimes it's not that difficult. It seems very difficult, though. It sounds very lofty sometimes when we talk about goal setting and achievement and this consistency of focus, right? Because consistency is key, right? I mean, you can talk a little bit about that, but I think that that's one of the maybe hardest things for people to deal with.
Sure, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, they pursue happiness. Yes. They want to be happy. They want to be, they want security. They want these kind of, and in my mind, what I want, again, the people that I'm graced enough to work with and to be around, I want them to have fulfillment. So whether you're happy or you're going through a hard time or we're struggling right now with what's going on in our world, you can still wake up and know that you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and you've been presented with an opportunity to pursue that. it may change a little bit. The world has an amazing way to nudge us.
Yes.
And a lot of times when people say they don't know what they need to do, they know what they need to do. They just don't want to do what they know they need to do. And a lot of times when things don't go right, they were given indications within themselves months before that something wasn't right. But their mind overrode their intention and what their body was saying, because they don't speak the same language. But
Right.
be still and know, they knew at some point in time something wasn't right. And every single decisions, it's like growth. It seems like it's taking forever, and then all of a sudden you skyrocket. And then it's the same thing with life and death. Little increment, little decisions that you make every day, and then all of a sudden there's a massive drop. And I think a lot of people right now are in a really big drop. Mm-hmm. And I think that people, when they're going through their careers and they kind of hit those bumps, or they say this boss or this team or this, there were indications that this was happening.
That's right.
And life is nudging you, and it's telling you it's trying to get you to move in a different direction. And in my experience, when you don't listen, eventually it's going to make you do it.
You're right. I mean, I can even share, with the group that was, and I shared with you when we spoke, right? That was my experience personally, right? I worked in one company for 20 years, had a great career there, just under 20 years, and then left and tried to start a business. The business didn't work out, but I always had this desire to have a business. And then I went back into my same discipline for about 10 more years. But what was interesting is that every job that I had progressively got less fulfilling, right? So to your point, after 10 years, Kathleen, it took me 10 years to look back and go, wait a minute. The universe has been trying to tell me something for these 10 years. And so what you're saying to me makes complete sense. That was my experience. And I had made a decision with my last job in this cycle. If this job is not a perfect fit, if it's not the fit that I think it's going to be, I'm getting completely out of this discipline and I'm doing something else. So I had made that decision even before I started that job, right? Because I kind of, to your point, knew I was starting to get these messages. And you're right, a lot of people career-wise have these struggles, but you're right, they don't listen to their gut, their heart, they listen to their brain, which is ultimately, trying to protect us, but it's tends to operate out of fear and not out of listening to our hearts and guts. And so it tries to override that to protect us. But in the end of the day, sometimes it's helping to keep us smaller, right? And helping us not to expand and to do what we're capable of doing. So I know I personally experienced that in my corporate career. So it's a great illustration of what you just said, I think.
Yeah. And that, I tell the kids all the time that I'm working with now. I started a basketball academy here in Connecticut. I've kind of figured out for me, again, what my calling is, what speaks to me is working with young kids, or working with recent grads, working with younger people. Right. Yeah. But I just had a conversation with them in our Zoom chat last week. In my experience, there's two motivations in life: inspiration and fear. And, fear is it's gonna drive you down, and inspiration it's a springboard, and it's going to throw you into something else. The challenge is once we get older, right? And we have families, and we have two careers, and we have kids, and we have bills, and we have that thing that's speaking to say, this is what I need to be doing, winds up getting drowned out in all of the daily responsibilities that have a deadline. Garbage gets taken out on Thursdays. You got to bring it out on Wednesday night. You got to feed the kids at night. You got to give them baths. So all these things that have a deadline, but the one thing that you could do to move you in the direction that doesn't really have a deadline, it does, because eventually we're all going to die. But in terms of what your passion is, what makes your heart sing, that thing that you need to invest in, you just never find the time to do it. And it's not about time management. That's an oxymoron. You can't manage time. You can only manage yourself within the time that you have in the 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 hours a day. Yep. So finding that time to invest in the things that's going to get you to the place where now you don't have to worry about being with that boss or being on that team because you're doing what your calling is.
Exactly. And I think that, you hit on an important thing too. And for people who are watching this, it doesn't even have to mean that, if let's say you love knitting. I get that maybe you won't think that knitting could be your career, but are you making enough time to knit or to do whatever it is that is your passion, right? Whether it's a side hustle that pays you or whether it's a hobby that really fulfills you. That's what, any of these things qualify for taking the time, making the time, right? To address that priority that fulfills you, right? That helps you feel most alive and most content, as you said. So when you're working with your teams or with organizations, whatever, you talked about foundations. So where do you start with people? Where do you start people at? Because I think, again, sometimes people get very overwhelmed by these kind of discussions and it feels too big to them, right, to start with. So where do you're working with young kids, so you've got to kind of keep it pretty simple at the start because you're having younger kids execute this very successfully. You've got a team that just is winning like crazy and beating teams a year older. So you're doing things with them that are helping their performance and helping them stay kind of eyes on the prize. So help us understand a little bit about how you start people off and where they start with all of this.
Sure. The interesting thing is it's the same material. I don't have to simplify it for them. Where my challenge is it's complicated when you get into it with adults.
That's interesting.
Right? Because the kids, they don't have the 14 letters after their names, the MA and the PhDs and then this and that and all of their knowing that's gotten them to a point where they finally realize they don't know what the hell they're doing and they're not happy, right? Where with kids, they just like to play basketball, So I take these things. Basketball for them right now is just their platform. Right. So just like a mom, that's her platform. A business owner, that's their platform. Basketball right now for these kids, that's their platform. But I'm taking these tools that they're going to be able to take for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Everything they're being taught, they just take out basketball and put something else in it. So it's the same content, right? It's them, it's educating them, it's creating intention, it's building commitment, it's designing strategy, it's ensuring flawless execution, and it's recruiting to align. Get the 3%. Find other people that have the intention that we have to be the best versions of ourselves within the platform that we're on. So, I take them through a series of exercises where I force them to think about this stuff and make some decisions and write it down. They basically create their own constitution, and then they create how they're going to do it. How are you going to do that on a consistent basis? That's a cute statement you just made. We can put it on a Hallmark card, but what are you going to do with it, right? How are you going to do it? And then most importantly, we get down to why, and why. That's the toughest one is them figuring out what that is. And that's a whole nother segment. That's going from left brain to right brain. And they don't, that's more feeling. That's more like what the thing that like you start thinking about, you get butterflies, you start sweating a little bit because you want it so bad. When Kobe Bryant passed away and people were talking about a gut punch, the emotional feeling that they had when that happened, that's your why. And so when you're trying to figure that out, picking the words to describe it, it takes time. Sometimes it'll just flippantly because they don't, the right side and the left side don't speak. But that one, so it's things of the heart. When someone says that their spouse is their soulmate, what does that mean?
Right. I think that for adults, the challenge is that with kids, they're a little bit more present. They're just like you kind of said, they're just being, right, up until a certain age. They're not as much in their heads, right, whether it's because of the letters behind their name or because of all this life experience that has informed where they're at today. So I think with adults, getting them to use to address the why, that gets at real vulnerable stuff for people.
Oh, right? Yeah. There's no doubt. And I have found in my experience, again, it's a tougher path for adults. And sometimes they're just too busy. There's too much going on. Like, I don't have time to think about that stuff. I've got a bill to pay. Yeah. My car payments due, my mortgage is due. I can't sit here and figure out my why. You know what I mean? But as long as people remain in that space, then they're going to have another boss, they're going to have another team, they're going to have another position where they're going to be scratching their head going, how did I wind up here? because
Yes.
it's not where you're supposed to be. And you
Right.
know where you're supposed to be. You're just not taking the time to figure it out.
So
And that,
perfect. Yes. It's
so,
funny. You know,
so it's
oh, go
repeated,
ahead.
it's just a cycle that people wind up going through. And
Yeah.
this doesn't mean, what I'm talking about doesn't mean that, a bunch of money is going to rain down on you. You know what I mean? It's about waking up in the morning
Yeah.
and understanding what you're going to, like, why, and like what you're doing,
Yeah.
with
And
this
having
pandemic.
passion behind that will help drive
Yeah.
you forward, to your point. And what's interesting in the work that I do is that I have found there are more and more people of more ages who are recognizing what you and I are talking about, which gives me such hope.
Yeah.
I think that it's so exciting to see people starting to recognize something doesn't feel right. Some people I spoke to within the last few months are young in their careers, like maybe around 30, hyper successful at big companies, big companies, doing really well, but are talking to me and telling me, I'm so unhappy. I don't want to do this anymore. And I tell them immediately, you're 20 years ahead of me. Good for you.
Right.
So really, it's like I really encourage these people. I say, gosh, you're in a way better position, because maybe, to your point, Kathleen, I had hints of this way longer ago. I mean, I always felt entrepreneurial, but I wasn't brave enough to pursue it, right? I wanted the security for a lot of reasons. I know why they were, but they, to your point, rose to the top. And my gut, my heart kind of got pushed down because I wanted to be responsible and do what I thought I needed to do or had to do in order to, have the life that I wanted to have. But now, for me personally, I can say I'm able to do that. I know you've personally kind of reinvented yourself multiple times, right? Doing things that are all aligned with your strengths, but continuing to change what that specific career, is. And that's really great to illustrate to people that it's possible. It doesn't mean you have to do that. You don't have to be full bore, but you can make changes, and it can propel you in a new direction. So even if you move a few degrees each time, you might be getting closer to where you need to be, like me, right? Over time. Other people might be able to make that change quicker, but the point is really this idea of listening to your why. And I know that you're a big fan of Simon, right? Sinek? Or Sinek?
Yes.
Sinek. What's the name of his book for people who are watching who might want to investigate that? That might be a nice place for them to start.
Start with why. It's a great book.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal book.
Yeah.
We actually wound up flipping my whole system on its head, because I always started with the what, the how, and then the why. And so I'm still trying to figure out in the system how to flip it. But the way I've done it for the years I've done it, it still works. It just, what was pulled out of that book reinforced everything that I've believed and everything that I've learned up until that point, and then it added some to it. So that's a great book.
Yes. So I think that that's a great resource for people, and I'll post that below, once we're done and once this interview gets posted. But I think that's a good place to start. But I understand completely your method of taking people from big picture, right, funneling it down, right,
Mm-hmm.
big picture, mission, values, right, everything into then your why. Makes complete sense. And I think for people, who haven't considered all these things, it's a nice way to flow them into that. So, we talked about the fact that there's so many people, with career challenges, especially now. We're hearing about a lot of really, challenges in the marketplace, and at the company level, at the employee level, at all sorts of levels. So it could be people, who are being laid off unexpectedly because of what's happening right now. It could be they're working at a job where it's not a fit for them, whether it's culture or a bad manager, or they just want to do something different, but they're overwhelmed. So what do you think are some things that, from kind of how you walk people through things, how do they start, or, what can they do in these challenging professional situations to kind of take a step or a few steps forward? Because I think that's what a lot of people crave, is trying to figure out, how do I even start to get out of this? One of the questions I often get is, how do you even start to consider a career change? So let's start there maybe, because all of these things are ultimately related to that. So where do I even start, right? So what would you say to that, or what part of your method would you say is going to fit in with kind of where somebody starts with that?
Well, I think that the most important direction that you just gave is they have to move, right? You've got to move. The only difference between a rut and a grave is the length of the hole. And decisions like this aren't going to be, you can't work something like this out while you're trying to figure out what you're going to make for dinner, about, what time you got to get your child to soccer, to the discussion you need to have with your husband tonight with what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, right. You've got to make time to be able to sift that out, right? Mm-hmm. But move. Like, everyone knows what it is that they want to do. And when you're moving in the direction of what your passion is, and it might change.
That's
but
right.
When you start to move in that direction, the universe is going to conspire on your behalf, and weird stuff is going to start to happen. You're going to see something, someone's going to say something, you're going to read something on Facebook. Like, as soon as you start to move in that direction, you're going to start being nudged to continue to move down that path. When I first moved here to Connecticut, I knew I was at a company in Chicago, loved it, but I knew I did not want to be in Chicago. I'd been in Asheville, North Carolina, South Bend, Indiana, Laramie, Wyoming. I'm a small town. I like a small town. I'm not a city person, even though I went to school in New York. And I just knew I just wanted to get out of Chicago, right? And so they approached me with a move in the company, and I just decided I was, no, I'd been there 10 years. I'd turned 50. I just felt like if I blinked my eyes, I was going to be there for another 10 years, and my life was going to be not, so I left. And I wound up getting recruited for a position that was in the Hamptons. It was a company that was Martha Stewart was affiliated with. Created position, created the salary, created this, and within 6 months, they yanked the whole thing. So now I'm in the Hamptons. And what did I want? I wanted to be more global. I wanted to live someplace beautiful, and I wanted to be out of Chicago, right? So so I was in the Hamptons. I'm like, well, you can't get any more global than working with the Stewarts. And so now I'm sitting there like, all right, now what do I do? And so I wound up in Connecticut, and I started thinking. I ran this academy. I started this academy about 20 years ago in Chicago. I had some travel teams. I had some kids that I was training on a regular basis. And then my career got pushed in a different direction. The system that we're talking about, I applied it in a company. It went ridiculously well. A lot of money was made. I taught it company-wide. I got asked to speak at a conference. I got asked to write a book. And so the basketball thing I was still coaching. It just wasn't with a ball and a hoop. So that got put on the side. So I got here to Connecticut, and I thought, okay, what do you want to do? Yeah. And I said, I want to get back working with kids. So I got on an app. It's called Coach Up. And I met my business partner now and his daughter, who at the time was 11. And I started to train her. And from that, and he knows nothing about basketball. He was an Olympic skater.
Wow.
So he and his wife are fabulous people. They got 4 kids, but he's an IT genius. He's an AI guy, and he's totally built this platform that is unbelievable for these kids who are 12 and 13 years old. So during this pandemic, like again, a problem turns into promise and possibility. This platform that's been built from this, that's covering both the Ignite program that we're talking about right now, to their cardiovascular, their strength training, their basketball workouts, their skill workouts, mentoring. I'm bringing in speakers to them every day. It's just made it just looks different right now, right? But the promise and the possibility that came out of the problem is crazy. But this all started because I left Chicago. I knew I had to get out. I knew I just needed to do something. And I'm probably going to wind up back there. I've got 7 brothers and sisters. I've got 25 nieces and nephews. 26 is on the way. My mom and dad are there. I miss them dearly, right? But I knew I had to go. And from that decision, I'm now in Connecticut building this amazing academy with this brilliant man, with these kids that I've went around and recruited just like I was in college, handpicked them to participate on this team. And they are just, just beating these. We're playing a year up because we can't, tournaments around here won't play us. And so we're having to go a year up, and they're winning those, but these are also kids that have been through the process that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
we get in these meetings and I say, what's your mission? And every single one of them has it. What are your values? Every one of them has it. Why? Why do you play so hard? Every single one of them knows why.
Yes.
Right. So so now when they're in practice and they're not doing, I can say, what's your mission? And they'll say it. What's your mission statement? They'll say it. What are your core values? They'll say it. Are you doing that right now? No. Okay. And so they can hold themselves accountable to it.
Right.
To this platform. But all of these tools that they have, they can then carry it on for the rest of their life. But that all happened because I chose to leave Chicago.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
I made one decision.
Yes.
And from that, a whole nother life for me. And, but I also knew, I knew that I wanted to work with athletes again. I didn't know I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know it was going to be this. I didn't know I was going to meet Peter, but I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, am I rich? No, no, but I wake up every day with butterflies because of what's being done, the impact that it's having, watching these kids grow, all from one decision.
Yeah.
I needed to leave the career I was in, and I wanted to get out of Chicago. So to me, you got to move. And once you do that and you do it with intention and you pay attention, be still and know at night when you're sitting there, what is it? Yeah. Everybody knows.
Yeah. You know what makes you happy? Like I think you brought up a great point. You may not know all the specifics, and that is okay. My business started differently. I thought it was going to be focusing on business to business work because that's what I had done my whole career. So I started there, but it evolved. And so if you are focusing on what you love doing, in my case, it's helping people. In your case, it's coaching kids, right? And motivating, right? And it's like, things will fall into place, to your point. Things will kind of come along. So this is the hard thing, I think, for people is the unknown, right? And so I think what you're saying today, and I think it's a great place for us to end today's talk, is really just this idea of understanding that with all of the chaos that's going on right now, there are still, to your point, there are still plenty of possibilities open to us. And frankly, I think that the time that people have now, because they're not commuting, because they're, freed up, they have the time that they said previously they didn't have. Right now, of course, there's things that are making your life busier. I'm cooking more at home, cleaning more, like in my kitchen every day, because everybody's eating at home every day. There are things that take up more time that didn't take up time before, but in the end, I have more flexibility, and many people do. And so to be able to sit still, to your point, to think and consider these things. I just had a call with a former coworker about this exact thing, and he's moved on from the company that we worked at, and now he's thinking about what's next after this. And I encouraged him to explore a couple of different ideas that I think were right underneath the surface, but were a little scary to him and a little not traditional, right, paths. So I think it's encouraging people to listen to their hearts and their guts, to figure out their whys. So we'll for sure highlight that book for everybody so that they can buy it if they want, and to be okay with a little bit of the uncertainty. I mean, there's tons of uncertainty surrounding us now. So if you fight against it out of fear, right, nothing good is going to come of that. You're going to kind of stay small. You're not going to be able to kind of explore and see, like you've said, the things that are right in front of you or that will present themselves to you if you're just only looking for them and open to them.
Right. And that gerbil wheel that they're in, they're not going to get out of it.
No.
Wherever you go, there you are. And you're going to wind up just recreating the same struggle that you're in because you're not where you're supposed to be. And
Right.
And again, it sounds so simple, and I've lived this like 3 different times, in terms of my life. And the decisions that I made. But I know that when I follow what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, the way I feel, the way that I wake up in the morning, even in the middle of a pandemic, it doesn't mean I don't have problems, right? It doesn't mean that I don't have struggles. It doesn't mean, but it just kind of bounces off you because I'm 10 years down the road in my head. I'm not in this pandemic.
Right.
I'm seeing where we're going to be 5-10 years down the road, each one of the kids that I'm working with and the academy as a whole. So what's going on today, you manage it. I put a mask on when I go to the store, right? But I'm not sitting in it, festering and, you know, and I'm still hand to mouth paying my bills, but I'm a lot happier doing it.
Yep. Well, I think that's great. I hope today's talk with Kathleen has helped everybody, you know, has given some people some motivation to consider different possibilities and to consider doing some different things, to making a decision, whether that decision is just to start mapping some of these things out, to start exploring these things that you've, you know, carried with you for years and maybe just didn't allow yourself to kind of listen to for whatever reason. Right? There's lots of possibilities out there. There's lots of opportunity. And with everything changing in the world, it's a really good time to consider that because our work lives may change quite a lot, right? And the opportunities that the traditional, let's say, opportunities that have always been there may change also. So for us to take control and for us to make our own decisions versus letting others make decisions for us or letting our environment or tradition or obligation make those decisions for us is so important. So Kathleen, you've been super great to talk to me today, and I'm sure everybody will get a ton out of our conversation today. And I wish you well. I appreciate you joining me, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks so much. Talk to you later.